Yeah, hello everyone. This is Rich, and today I got something pretty exciting for you guys today. So, you guys have know I'm working on a Seaman game here, and you can see some code up here. Actually, it's an XML file. And the purpose of today's talk or video is to basically expose how the inner workings of the Seaman goes. On how it works in the system that I developed to make it work. Namely, the dynamic scripting that the players of the game will be able to add either through Seaman the game, through talking to him to teach him, or for manually editing the XML file to add your own conversations and feelings to Seaman. So that's what the whole wait was about for me explaining what this was about. I wanted to get it down pat, and I have done so. So I'm going to be going over today, showing you how it all works with my system. Now, being the nice guy I am, I'm doing this, but please, out of respect for me, do not try to copy my material. It took a lot of work. It's very hard. Just please, I'm trusting my viewers to not take the work or credit for work that I have done. Thank you. So, one of the main features I wanted to add for Seaman that wasn't there in the beginning was to dynamically teach Seaman to become smarter and smarter. So I have developed a system to do so. Now, obviously, when you have a child, you teach a child through what you do, the environment, and on and on and on. But obviously computers aren't, the technology for computers isn't at that point yet. So we have to teach it in a little bit different ways. So what we do here is the game is going to be released with a plethora, I mean probably thousands of conversations that are pre-scripted already in there. There are going to be two different types of conversations. They're going to be scripted conversations, which are things that are supposed to happen, and Seaman's supposed to say and supposed to respond to, which is basically the storyline. And there's going to be dynamic conversations, which is something where the user can say something, anything he wants, and Seaman will respond on how he would, without even being scripted into the system. So I just wanted to show you how, a question might be, well, how would you decide what an appropriate response is to one of Seaman's questions? Well, I have a question here. Let's look at this XML file, and we could just browse over it for a second. We have the top tag here of Seaman vocabulary. And again, this is my own system that I have developed here. And we have Seaman vocabulary, which is the top here. And then we have Seaman questions. And inside that, we have different types of questions. We have question 1, which has this data inside here. We have a question 2. We have data inside here. And obviously, there is a question 3, question 4. That would be the format. Now, these do need to be named, specific naming convention, so it is very important when I release this game that you guys know this up front. There is a specific naming convention if you want to add your own conversations through this XML file that'll be included, and not do it through the actual game mode teaching if you want to do it through script file. So we got question 1 and question 2 like that. We got a whole bunch of data, and that's end of Seaman questions. Now this is a very, 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 very stripped down. I've only included 2 questions and 1 response for this thing here. I don't want to give the whole game away, but this is the beginning, and this is the end of the file. It's a small little file that I put together for this showing here today, and we have 2 questions, and then we have a Seaman response. Responses here, and we have 1 response. So let's go over how this works. You may be asking, so how do you get the computer or Seaman to know that whatever you say as a response is valid to his question? Like, he may ask, do you like cats? And if you said, I like the moon, how would you know if that's an appropriate response to his question or not? And this is how it works here. So each question here, you see question 1, each question has an ID, which is something that I use in code that you can get all these question data here, all the questions data stored into variables and vectors here based on an ID. So I just have an identifier, so you can get all the data based on the ID through code. We have a question. Each question has a question ID, and each question has a response ID. Each question has variables. We'll talk about that in a minute. Each question has a question, which is a script, which is just what you want Seaman to say. Hello, and welcome to Seaman, a game about me. In this game, blah, 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 blah. And then each question has a feeling. And we'll talk about that a little later. And we have wait for response, and we put yes. You can have a yes or you can have a no. So that's what each question consists of. Now let's go over in detail what each of these mean and represent. So, like I said, each question has a question ID and each question has a response ID. So what I did here at the beginning of the game and code side, I told it to search for the question because this is, again, a scripted thing here. It's something that I know is going to happen. So it has an ID of 1. So I told my C++ code to sit there and say, okay, find question data by ID. And I told it to search for 1. So I went ahead and gathered all this and stored it into a variable. And actually I stored it into an object. Hey, Jeffrey, be quiet a little, okay? You gotta be, shh. Okay, thank you. And stored it into an object. So what it does is it goes ahead, and I told Seaman to ask the question this. So what happens is after it asks this question here, it goes ahead and the system will sit there and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait for a response. He won't ask any more questions or anything like that. He'll sit there and wait for a response. The reason why is because since all this data is loaded into my object already, I'm able to see these values. And I told it to, when he asked this question in particular, that we do need to wait for a response because it equals yes. So I told it if wait for response is yes inside here, then we need to basically wait for a player to respond. That's how we control if a response is if a question is a question or it's just a statement where you don't need to respond. On top of that, like I said, each question has a feeling, and in this case, it's any. And what happens is, before Seaman asks any sort of question, it checks the feelings tag. And what it is Seaman has feelings, and currently, I'll just list a few, 3 to be exact. He has a lot more feelings, but just list 3. Besides any, there is happy, sad, and angry. Besides, okay? So happy, sad, and angry, those are the feelings that Seaman can have, and that's all controlled through C++. So whatever you say to Seaman will affect how he feels. Whatever you do to Seaman will affect how he feels. So before it asks this question, he's going to check his feelings. If he says, okay, I'm happy. Now, does happy equals whatever? So if this feeling here was happy, then he would ask this question. Because the question, he can only ask it if he's happy, and yes, he was feeling happy. So he can go ahead and he can ask this question. Now, this is a particular one. He's any, meaning no matter what type of feeling he's feeling, he'll ask this question because it's meant to be asked, and I didn't want feelings to affect this question. So we have any here, meaning he'll ask this question no matter what he's feeling. If I go ahead and I put happy in between these tags, he will only ask these questions if he's feeling happy. That is a way of affecting how Seaman says something, what he says, if it's rude or not, based on how he's feeling. So that's my feeling system. It's more complicated than that, but that's the basic idea. So after he asks this question, he found, okay, I can ask this question if I'm feeling anything. I've asked the question. Now, how do we find an appropriate response? And that's the most difficult thing, finding the response that is acceptable and then having him respond back to you based on what you said. That was really, really hard. But like I said, I got it done, and that's why I'm sharing this with you. So what happens is he asks this question, and remember, all this stuff is loaded up into data already in the variables and stuff. So what happens is it checks response ID is 1. So then I go ahead and I have a traversal system which will traverse through all the different responses. So what will happen is the code will skip down, and this is response 1 because we only have response 1 here, 1 response. But you know, you'll have response 1, response 2, response 3, response 4, on and on and on. Now remember, Every response has a response ID and a question ID. Okay? And so what will happen is he'll say, okay, I've asked the question, now let me find an appropriate response. And what will happen is question ID of 1, so it's going to find all the responses, okay, all the responses that have a question, a response ID of 1. So I'm sorry, the response ID is 1, so it finds all of the responses that have a response ID of 1. And then after it does that, it'll load this data. It says, okay, I found an appropriate response, and it loads all the data up in here. And so once it says, okay, I've spoken, okay, I spoke something, it goes and says, okay, is this an appropriate response to what Seaman just said? And it says it has the same response ID, so yeah, it is. So this response here is any. What this means is that I'm allowed to say anything, and it'll be accepted as an appropriate response. Because things like this, let me ask you, see, hello and welcome to Seaman, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of this question, he asks, so what is your name? Obviously, there's not a predefined word I can say that tells somebody name, so you have to be willing to accept any sort of response. Any sort of response. So in that case, on the response, we put any. That means it will accept any as a response. So now it says, okay, we've got a response from the player. How do we decide? Oh, by the way, we have a feeling here. Every response has a feeling, and this is neutral. So every response has a feeling here, meaning when I say this, it's going to add a neutral point to Seaman's feeling. Because my name really isn't going to make him happy or sad or anything like that. So what it's going to do is it's going to add a point to his neutral feeling in the system. So it says, okay, this response has a neutral feeling. It's going to add 1 point, 2 points, however I decide in the end. How much neutral? So he's going to feel more neutral now for his feelings. Then it goes ahead. So how do I respond to what the user just said? The Seaman will be like, okay, he said something. Now how do I respond to what he said? And that's controlled by the question ID. So this question ID is 2. So then it goes ahead and it searches through all the questions. And it doesn't get 1, but it gets as many questions that have a question ID of 2. So the question ID of 2 is here for the question, in response, a question ID of 2. So what happens is it says, okay, so by him responding, I can say this, because the question ID is 2. If there was question number 3, and the question ID was 2, he can say that, and he can say that. So let's say we have 10 different things that Seaman can respond with, based on what I just said, because it searches the matching question ID. It then goes ahead and it says, okay, let's find a random one. I can say 10 different things, but let's just choose a random one. And I have the math random function in C++. It chooses randomly based on how many responses there are, a random response. So once it gets a random response again, random response, I'm talking about if there's 3 or 4 different questions, it gets the question, all this question data, and chooses one of those and gets one of these question data. So in this case, let's say question 2, because it does have a matching question ID as the response. So it's going to ask this question, and before it asks the question, it's going to say, again, am I feeling neutral? Yep, I am. So it's going to go ahead and it's going to ask the question. So your name is, and you have an underscore here, and this is where the variables come in. So each the player, there's going to be a set amount of variables that the player can play around with, because sometimes you don't know what, in situations where the player is asking for your name, can you predict what somebody's name is going to be when they're playing your game? No, you don't know. They're going to make up anything. So in this case, you do need variables, and the player can use that. So there's going to be a list of variables that are going to be in the XML file that's going to let you know what variables you have access to. And in this case, there's a player last phrase. And so under variables, you're going to have variable underscore 1, variable underscore 2, variable underscore 3. So when it asks the question, remember I told you it gets all the data every time it tries to ask a question. So it does. And it says, okay, we have variables. Variable 1 is going to equal player last phrase, variable 2, blah, blah, blah. So what happens is, before it asks the question as well, it's going to basically parse. it's not really parsing, but it's going to take the question and it's going to search for the first underscore in the phrase. And when it searches for the first underscore in the phrase, it says, okay, replace the first underscore in the phrase with the variable player last phrase. So it will. So your name is player last phrase. On the C++ side, it's going to say something along, well, it does say something along the lines of if variable underscore 1 equals player last phrase, then it's going to get the player's last phrase that he said, the last thing that I said, and it's going to substitute it with this. So then it will be, since my name is Rich, it'll sit there and go, so your name is, get the last phrase by the player, which is Rich, Rich. So your name is Rich. Now if there was 2 underscores, it would replace the first underscore with the first variable, the second underscore that it came across with the second variable. And that's how that works. So I'm able to use variables in there. All right, hold on a second, guys. Just 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So like I was saying, we have the way of adding variables into the scripts that allow us basically to use things that we don't exactly know what the player is going to say. So let's just go over this one more time. Just an overview. Seaman has feelings. Okay? He has feelings. Everything you do, everything you say is going to affect his feelings. Everything you say affects his feelings, and we can just show that right here. Whenever we respond with something, and it says the feeling is neutral, so this response would add a neutral point. And then it calculates which points have the higher. Does neutral, let's compare 2, just for example. There's a lot it compares, but for simplicity's sake, it says, okay, I have a happy of value of 10 and a neutral the value of 11. So his feelings are going to be neutral. It has a neutral point. So his it'll now be 12. His neutral points will now be 12. He'll decide that the Seaman's neutral. So then it goes ahead and it's going to ask, say something back to you based on what you said by searching for the question ID of 2. So it's going to search all of the questions, gather every single question that has a question ID of 2. Once it has that, it's going to load every single data in here of all the questions that it found with the question ID of 2 into each individual objects. And then it's going to take, let's say if I have 10, again, 10 questions with the ID of 2 because there's 10 valid things he can say. It's going to traverse through all of those, get randomly one of those. Then it's going to try to ask it. Then it's going to check how it's feeling. If he's feeling neutral, which in this case he will be, he'll ask this question. So your name is blah, 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 blah. So let's say one of these here, we had a question, underscore 3, that had a question ID of 2 as well, and it happened to choose that one. But the feeling was angry. So if he's feeling angry, maybe he would say something like, hey, dickhead. So apparently your name is blah, 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 blah. See what I'm saying? It's a way of you able to scripting different things that he can say based on his feelings. And then he'll go ahead and choose it. Now, if he's not feeling angry, he won't ask that question. He'll find another random response again and again and again. That's how that works. So basically, that's how this system works. It is predefined. And you may say, well, how can you get smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter if he actually has a limited things on release that he can say? Well, there's the ability to teach him. You can go in this XML file, and you can go ahead using the format, and it'll be all explained on how to add your own conversations and activities and stuff like that on release. It'll all be explained on how to edit these files. And you can make your own conversations and stuff. Now, and it is working. I've tested already. Still very, very, still work in progress, but it's working. And also in the game, if you don't want to edit it if you don't want to edit it inside these files, and you'd rather be more interactive about it inside of the game, if you say something that Seaman does not understand as one of the predefined responses, it's going to ask you, I do not understand, or something along, I do not understand what you were saying. Would you like to teach me what it's all about? And you would say yes. And it will go through a long line of questioning on, okay, how would I respond to something like this? And you would speak to him, tell him how he would respond. And then he says, so you want me to respond like this to that question? And he'll tell you, just to confirm he got it right. And he'll speak it back to you, and you'll say yes. And then he'll ask you, how would it make me feel if you said something like this? And then you can tell him the feeling that it would make him feel based on what you said. And then and he'll ask, how would I, and that's how it would teach you, teach Seaman. And then he now has that as part of his vocabulary, and it goes ahead in the background while you're playing the game. It's going to add new entries into this XML file. It's going to add new entries to the XML file. So if you quit the game and went to the XML file, you'll see it'll add a new question, a new response, and all the data will be all filled in based on what you tell Seaman in teaching him. Now, and that way, it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. His vocabulary, what he can say, how he can respond, if he's angry, if he's mean, all that kind of stuff you can affect. And the best part about it is it's through XML. That's why I chose XML as the language of my choice, and how conversations are going to be scripted. Hold on a second. Jeffrey, get down, buddy. Get down.
Okay, Mommy. Okay, Daddy.
All right, hold on. So the best part, like I said, is why I chose XML and do it this way is because now you may get, you made the responses, so you know what to expect when somebody, when you're having a conversation, you say, oh yeah, I taught him that. So it really isn't special to you because you already knew what he was going to say because you taught him it. But here's the deal. Other people, your friends who play this game, do not know that, the different things that you've added. So all it takes, okay, is to copy this Seaman vocabulary into, maybe upload it somewhere. I could have a website based on the Seaman game for all these stuff to be hosted and chatting and stuff like that, sharing. But the cool feature is called sharing, and what it is, you just copy your Seaman vocabulary XML from all the stuff that you've spent teaching it and having conversations, and give it to somebody else, and they would put this in the directory. Now they would have a fully new experience. They basically would have a whole new game. Why? Because the Seaman is a lot smarter than the original one that they had. And if they had built up Seaman to be certain smart and certain personality, they can give you their file, and now you would have a whole new game. So basically it's like modding, right? Instead of like making a level with modding, you're modding somebody's intelligence, and you're sharing your different fish personality. So that's why I chose XML. For dynamic scripting, a way of doing it, dynamic scripting of conversations, being able to teach Seaman, and be able to share your fish personality with someone else. So they'll be experiencing a whole new game, and they'll always be fresh in new content because of the fact that they're playing something that they never did. You made that person, that fish, as smart as you did and spent all that time to make it the personality that you wanted, and now somebody else can have that same experience that you had with your fish, and it'll be all new to them. So guys, I just wanted to go ahead and explain how this works and to show you what I've got done so far in terms of functionality and features. So to top off to summarize the features, we got sharing. Basically, share the knowledge of your fish with someone else so they can experience something brand new and fresh and to keep the game going. We have dynamic scripting offline, conversation scripting offline, where you can sit there and go in the file and edit the way you want to. You got interactive teaching, which the C++ side will add all this content to the XML file, and you're actually verbally teaching Seaman. And you have the ability to have a wide, unlimited amount of responses and conversations that you can have, and something the original game never had. And that's all fresh and new. So thank you guys for sticking with me. If you guys have any comments or suggestions, just let me know, okay, guys? But I figured I'd just keep you guys, blow the doors open a little bit, expose some of the inner workings of how stuff works. And trust me, you don't want to see the XMLs. The C++ code. I got a lot of it, different folders and stuff. But it was a lot of programming, and it was tough. Going through all these tags, elements, loading it up, checking the data, searching, gathering all the questions. It was tough. Still not done yet, but a lot was done, and all the stuff I talked about, today, is stuff that is done, and you guys can look forward to an actual interactive demonstration soon. Meaning that if it's allowed through CryEngine at this point to distribute a little demo, I'm going to dish out an interactive little demo that people can actually try out for themselves and see how it works. That won't be for a while, but it'll be soon enough, I guess. Okay, guys, thank you guys very much, and just comment, rate. Let me know how I did, good or bad. All right, guys, thank you very much. Bye.